Well, Bill O'Reilly says that if the Montana sex ed program is passed, that second graders in Montana are not going to be able to discuss, nor anybody for that matter, going to be able to discuss Jeffrey Dahmer because he was a gay cannibal. Oh my God, we can't have that. Dr. Judith Reisman is on the line with us. She is the... Excuse me, I just lost this. No, she is the scientific advisor for the California Protective Parents Association and the author of several books, including her latest, which is called Sexual Sabotage, which is about the Kinsey report, if I skimmed through it correctly. Dr. Judith Reisman, welcome to the program.
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
Nice to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You are just plain old, flat out, flipped out about teaching sex ed to kids in Missouri. Have you not looked at the studies that show that when kids, Montana, have you not looked at the studies that show that when kids are not taught sex ed, that they tend to have more sex, earlier sex, and more dangerous sex?
Yeah, well, I've looked at pretty much all of those studies, and I also am very well aware of where the sex ed came from and who's constructed those studies and why they're simply bogus information that's been perpetrated for, now about 40 years, coming out of the Kinsey Institute in Indiana, based upon a body of research, quote unquote, that was fraudulent at its outset and that trained people to teach sex education based upon that fraud. We're looking at Dr. Kinsey's research, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male. You're looking
Kinsey's
at...
dead, isn't he?
Yeah, he's dead.
I mean, why that fight?
Yeah, he's dead.
But, I mean, what about looking at, like, right now, that in Uganda, when they stopped teaching sex ed and started saying, whatever, we'll let parents take care of it, AIDS numbers started spiking when they started teaching sex ed. It went down. That the red states in America, the poor states where they tend not to teach sex ed and they don't have comprehensive sex ed, they have higher rates of unwanted pregnancies and sexually transmitted diseases.
Sorry, but when we look back at the period of time when we did not have sex ed or when we had what we called hygiene, sex hygiene, and kids were learning simply about reproduction, and they were also learning, don't have sex till you get married. I mean, in the old days. Now I'm 75, so see, I'm old. But in those years, if you look at our comparison to our data to today, there's no comparison. When Kinsey started his research and he was advocating sex education in the schools, it was based on the claim that children are, quote, sexual from birth. And since they're sexual from birth, this was the belief system that he advocated. Nobody believed it until he came on board.
Actually, Sigmund Freud was suggesting that back in 1897.
But Sigmund said we went through this latency period and all that sort of stuff.
But he was saying the same thing.
Well, yeah, and then Kinsey said, well, yes, Sigmund was right, except he was wrong in one thing, and that is that there is no latency period. And, of course, Sigmund himself was pretty much stoned half the time.
Well, for 7 years, yeah.
He was
cocaine
happily tripping along.
No, I wrote a book about Sigmund Freud called "Walking Your Blues Away." I'm very familiar with his history.
Yeah,
but my point is that
the research also by Jeffrey Mason that blew poor Sigmund out of the water as well.
Sigmund Freud has been discredited, and to some extent the Kinsey report has been discredited. But that's not the issue. The issue is that when you teach kids about how the human body works and what sexual activity is and what dangerous sexual activity is, then they tend to be more respectful of their bodies and they tend to be more appropriate in their behavior. Isn't this common sense?
Tom, look around you. We've had sex education spawned by Kinsey and his followers because, remember, there was no sex education in the United States of America like what we're talking about until Kinsey formed the human sexuality field. Now, that field is completely trained by Kinsey. There was no question about that. All the people that are trained in that field came out of the
Are you suggesting, Dr. Reisman, that right now what we're seeing is an explosion of sexual activity among younger children?
Oh, well, I think we may have noticed that.
Okay, yeah, I'm agreeing with you.
And where did it come from?
I
Look,
think that
I
it's
was a
coming
kid.
from the internet. I am.
Come on. If we look at the sex, if we look
have
at,
you
now, give me
looked
a
at the
break.
internet recently? I mean,
Tom,
up
I
until
know
2
the
years ago, if you
internet.
Googled White House, you got a website that actually showed people having intercourse.
Excuse me, I'm not defending the garbage on the internet.
I
I'm the last
think that
person.
we've got 6-year-olds who are being exposed to this kind of behavior, and they're thinking, "Oh, let's try that."
Yeah, but how come that our sex education was in place 20 years ago, and we had massive increases 20 years ago in illicit, quote unquote,
Because it
sexual
was the tail
activity?
end. Because it was the tail end of the invention of the birth control and the legalization of the birth control in the mid
Yeah,
'70s.
and so that's why I urge people to read my
caused the
book
sex.
so that they'll learn how come we got the legalization of widespread sexual activity.
But all of this is ancient history. Right now, Montana
No.
is trying to clean this up. They're trying to say to
Montana's
these
not
young
gonna
kids,
clean that.
you
Come
know
on,
that stuff
give
that you're
me
seeing
a
on the
break.
internet? That's dangerous stuff.
Hey, give me a break. When we wanted kids to stop smoking, we put those little signs on the cigarette
We
boxes,
showed them
which
pictures of
made-
rotten
no,
lungs.
Why did they stop smoking? And that was because John Wayne came on TV and said, I'm dying, and I'm dying from smoking. So the cigarette industry stopped distributing advertisements on TV because that meant that John Wayne had a chance to be on TV. No.
We passed laws against
Tom,
advertising cigarettes on TV.
Give me a break, because I only have a few minutes with you. So what I want to say to your public is, read that book that I wrote, Sexual Sabotage. Why? Because this is a long-range problem. This problem began with the sexual revolution. Remember that word, the sexual revolution, all right?
You know, Dr. Reisman, I am agreeing with you that people were having more sex because of the sexual revolution, because all of a sudden women didn't have to worry about getting pregnant because of the birth control, and this was before AIDS. I was a teenager during that time. I remember it well. And I'm agreeing with you that their kids now are having more sex in more dangerous ways, and frankly, I think it's because 6-year-olds are seeing this stuff on the web, and I've got a problem with that, and I think we should have a .xxx domain, and it should be locked out.
Problem. I couldn't agree with you more.
But all of those things, in my opinion, are strong reasons why we should be teaching children what body parts are and what reproduction is and what sex is.
Realistic. When we go
And you're
into the
saying that we should
classroom
not be
and
teaching sex ed in schools.
This is not sex ed. This is sex miseducation. Look, I was there when my kids were watching the show on drugs, okay? And they were told that this show on drugs, a marijuana update, was going to help other children to stop smoking and stop using drugs. Baloney.
I have the Missouri standards
let
in
me
front of me
finish.
that you're attacking. The Missouri
Pardon?
standards say for kindergarten, recognize elements of a healthy relationship, respecting
Come on,
caring boundaries.
have you read what they were going to teach those kids?
I have it right in front of me.
And they also wanted to give them an opportunity to learn through pornography.
No, there's the word pornography is nowhere in these guidelines.
Sexually explicit material. Give me a break.
The word pornography is nowhere in these
No, they
guidelines.
won't use what is sexually explicit material. Come on.
Well,
you're telling children that
how
they
do you
should
just
look at
how do you
sexually
describe a
explicit material?
penis and a vagina without being what you're calling sexually explicit?
That's not what they said.
And
They
this
don't
is,
say
by the way, not for
scientific
kindergartners. This is for the 6th
descriptions.
graders.
Back up, Tom. They don't say scientific descriptions, scientific images of vagina. Now, come on.
I have the standards right in front of me. I'm looking at page 45 of the Missouri Standards, Functions and Interrelationships of Systems, Human Sexuality. Please tell me which line I should read on the air to share with our listeners what you're talking about, because I've got it right in front of me, and I'm assuming you do too.
I don't have it in front of me. So where's the one about the sexually explicit material? I mean, where there.
I have read all of this. I read the whole thing before we went on the air.
Up.
I don't find that phrase anywhere.
It is absolutely there, and I'll have to. I'm not
Grade
on the air
7,
long
discuss
enough
the
with you,
Supreme
but
Court
I will
decision.
happily find it and send it back to you because I've written on it. All right? So all I'm saying is, people, you've got to go back and take another look at how we got to where we are. We are not supposed to be teaching children how to do oral activity. Yeah.
No, but we should
something.
describe to the to adolescent children who are of the age where they can do it what it is and what its dangers are. Dr. Judith Reisman,